Hi everyone, nice meeting you. Glad you take time to be here. And my name is Dim Baars, Global Account Director in Asendia. And look forward to dive into the topic we have for you today, which is customer-centric logistics.
Okay, and I'm Helen Scurfield. I'm CEO of Asendia Global Returns. Been with Asendia for 6 years now, and international logistics for probably what seems like forever. But yes, and Dim and I will tag team our topic on customer-centric logistics.
Yeah, so together we bring nearly 40 years of experience in international logistics. Well, we've seen a lot. I think 2025 so far has reminded us of a year where how vital adaptability and innovation are, especially in today's e-commerce landscape. So therefore, we're really interested to and thrilled to be here today to discuss with you customer-centric logistics, which we believe is in the heart of all of us. We do this to run through the customer journey from a retailer perspective. And before we do this, a quick word about Asendia. So Asendia is a global logistics provider for global delivery and return solutions. We are a joint venture from Swiss Post and La Poste. The beauty of Asendia is we are an asset-light company, which means we don't own our own trucks, our own planes. We're really flexible, we're agile to adjust to the best logistics solution, which can be end-to-end, which can be part of the supply chain. So we operate from 32 locations globally, and from these locations we can access over 200 markets, which makes us really flexible and really, I would say, really custom-made to design the best solution. So just to name a few, we work for customers like Amazon, eBay, Etsy, but also for big retailers like ASOS and Boo and many others. What we would like to cover with you today, 4 key topics. So nowadays, very unprecedented times. So we start with the state of global e-commerce. We will move on to global growth e-commerce trends, where we zoom in on regional patterns, but we also highlight consumer behavior. We will explain what we believe is customer-centric logistics, and then we will bring in some concrete case studies to highlight real benefits. So let's start with the big picture. Despite the challenges we're facing today, like tariffs and unpredictable supply chains, the global e-commerce market continues to grow. So according to research, the market will reach $4.3 trillion by the end of this year. And between 2025 and 2029, there's an expected annual growth rate of 8%. So we did a research which is actually in our latest paper, Beyond Borders. So at the end of the presentation, you can scan a QR code and you get a copy for free. We carried out a survey including 1,000 retailers from Europe, UK, US, and Asian Pacific countries. And we did ask them about the confidence of international e-commerce. It turns out that 72% are confident about expanding in international e-commerce. Not surprisingly, 44% of the retailers also confirmed that they are experiencing negative impact as a result of the tariffs. Of course, selling internationally doesn't come without challenges. So we did ask the 1,000 retailers, what are the biggest challenges you're facing today? Which is actually a great insight for us to design the solutions they need. Number 1 turned out to be shipping costs, 41%, closely followed by customs and regulations. And the complexity of logistics and fulfillment was also called out. Well, these challenges are real. We do believe they can be managed and they can be solved. And this is something we will look into in our presentation. But before we do that, we also look at growth opportunities.
Thanks, Dim. Okay, starting to look at where Again, referring back to the research we've just done that's available in our Beyond Borders paper, you can see very clear regional patterns, and the expansion strategy for retailers varies very much by their home market. It's driven by the ease of accessing neighbouring countries, proximity, and even using the same language. It's much easier to move into a market that's familiar to where you currently operate. So we can see in the APAC region, you've got 40% of retailers looking to target East Asia, 36% targeting Southeast Asia. Likewise, in the US, focus is very much on Canada, South America, but also Western Europe. There's 23% of retailers moving into that area. Within Europe, though, it's very much focused on growing within the European region. And 56% of European retailers are really targeting growth within Western Europe. And then in the UK, again, despite Brexit, Europe is still very much the area for focus for growth, 41% looking to grow out of the Western European countries. Now, we're also seeing demand for more far-reaching expansion beyond the local region. And despite the challenges with the tariffs, we have 23% of APAC retailers looking to move into North America and 30% of Hong Kong retailers. Now, obviously, given the de minimis changes, tariff changes, that's clearly going to be a challenge. But it's obviously an area of growth and something to get into. And likewise, 17% of Asian retailers are looking to go into Western Europe, and particularly France and Germany. And we also see the UK, European retailers, again, looking for the US. Tariffs are actually creating more of a level playing field. Chinese goods then becoming more expensive, but it actually means that the European UK goods can become in a similar price. So, and I think, but it's what's key in growing. It's not about one size fits all. It's making sure localization, understanding the local market, customer expectations, what they want from delivery, from service, the experience, is taken into account, and need to be able to meet those local needs in order to ensure success. Then we look at how customers are selling. Now, within Europe, retailer-owned websites really take precedence as a sales channel. But when globally, that shifts across the marketplaces, 44%. We see the rise of social commerce, particularly in health and beauty and the fashion industries, and C2C platforms are also surging. The likes of eBay, Etsy, Vinted are really taking off. And what you can see through the platforms is because they've integrated customer experience tools, providing choice of shipping options, more visibility, tracking, that's something retailers can also learn from because it's providing a much stronger customer experience. So what you see is regardless of the channel, the retailers who are successful are those who take a common approach and have customer experience at the heart of the sale and the delivery. And then we look at who you're selling to. Now, consumer expectations continue to evolve, and very much expecting now the same experience as they get domestically. So that could be fast delivery, it's convenient delivery, so when they want it, so they can pick it up. It's transparent pricing. They don't want surprises of additional costs and fees to pay at the door. And if you do need to return it, it needs to be hassle-free. It can't be completing lots of paperwork, taking ages to get it back and get your refund. Now we see that customers are becoming increasingly more comfortable in purchasing cross-border, but we see that, as you see on the statistics on the slide, this is from a slightly older survey from last year when we spoke to 18,000 consumers. 27% of them will buy cross-border if it's transparent. So the price they're paying that's it. So they pay at the checkout, they're done. Nothing else, no surprises. But we also see some generational and market differences around the expectations around delivery times, delivery prices. So for example, Australia, retailers or customers, much more likely to accept delivery times of up to 2 weeks. We saw 66% of the consumers who responded. Whereas in Italy, 55% of the consumers would want their delivery within 4 to 7 days. So very different expectations. But it means then it's something you can work with. You need to understand your customers, And so it's not just a nice to have to understand your customers and tailor your logistics around it. It's really becoming essential. So another area impacting retailers, very much in the technology space. It's no longer possible just to stay still. You've got to continue to evolve, and we can see the pace at which technology continues to change. Our survey showed that we've got 35% of retailers very much driving for faster delivery, faster fulfillment, and that's particularly in like general merchandise, sport and leisure. We've got over a third of retailers starting to prepare for AI and increasing automation, so providing smarter recommendations at checkout, part of the purchasing decision, integrating chatbots, and all about making that service much slicker. And this becomes increasingly more important depending on the type of sector. So we see up to 51% of retailers who sell electrical goods really moving into this space. And then in terms of overseas selling, it's about localized payment options. We've got 32% of retailers now actively looking for new methods. It's not as simple as just credit cards anymore. It's how do you tap into the likes of Alipay or WeChat Pay and really making that localized experience for the consumer. And then the final trend is obviously very much about sustainability. Still a priority. And I think that's very much despite the financial constraints and challenges that it brings. 41% of retailers are really feeling the pressure to lower emissions. And in response, 33% are actively consolidating shipments, so bringing them together before sending them out. And 29% are proactively partnering with green certified providers to work with to be able to reduce their carbon footprint. So in terms of international retail, as you can see, the environment's changing near daily, responses to legislation, customer needs, and so on. And that agility and flexibility throughout the supply chain is key. It's about having that faster fulfillment, the smarter returns, the greener logistics. And obviously you can't never be truly carbon neutral. It's not an industry that's set up for that. But it's really important to be transparent and honest to consumers, because offering real sustainable choices, providing information, and communicating transparently really will drive loyalty. Because consumers do have environmental concerns and it does affect their purchasing decision. And the research in the Beyond Borders paper showed that 24% actually actively take this into consideration when purchasing from a retailer. And that also varies by countries. So some countries are more than 1.5 times more likely to take environmental factors into account. So, coming to the core of this session, what is customer-centric logistics?
Pause and see if they've got any questions.
No problem.
Guys, any questions on any of that first part? There's a lot of data being thrown at you there. Has anybody got any questions for clarification or anything they're a little bit curious about that was mentioned? I've got one, if that's okay. So you talked there about social selling and social platforms, 20-something%, 20% I think it was.
Yeah.
So is that like some TikTok and so on? And is it Gen Z that are doing that? Is it the fastest moving trend and so on? How more prominent is that now than it was, let's say, 2 years ago?
It's definitely picking up. I can't remember the exact statistic in that. It's in the report, but it is something that's really starting to
ratchet up.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think, and even anecdotally, I think very much started with Gen Z, but you're starting to see it actually spread more as people do word of mouth and so on, because I've seen that above even like peers and so on.
Yeah.
So I think it's definitely gaining traction.
Product placements and QR codes on TV programs and so on, and instant purchasing and so on. So can I just have a show of hands? Who in the blue lane here are retail? If you could just stick your hands up if you're retail, so we get a sense of in the room. That's probably about 12, 13, I think. Okay, cool, good to know. So if you've got a question, don't forget QR code app or just raise your hand. Carry on.
Okay, so customer-centric logistics then, what is it? It's really about designing your supply chain, and that's from the initial browsing by the consumer through to the order, the delivery, and the returns, so that the customer experience is really at the heart of that whole journey. So it's really taking logistics beyond just the operation. It's not just moving something from A to B or B to A if it's a return. It's bringing it, making it an integral part of the customer journey, and getting it right can strengthen the brand. Getting it wrong can really undermine it. And I think the challenge then here is very much about balancing that customer experience with operational efficiency, because clearly you can personalize logistics to the nth degree, but it then becomes cost prohibitive. So it's not just about having necessarily the fastest or the cheapest service, it's about having the right service and the right options for your customer, depending on their market, their age, your product, the value of it, and really understanding what customer centricity actually means. So for cross-border, that's about making it a seamless, the end-to-end that feels local, so that when the consumer's purchasing, they don't have the barriers that are traditionally associated with moving items across borders. So it's regardless of where it's fulfilled from, it's as though they bought it from a local website. So logistics is not just it becomes a value add. It's not just a cost center, because having logistics that are reliable, that are trustworthy, and really add to the experience, drive loyalty, they drive those repeat purchases and should drive growth. So what we're going to look at now is go through what we've identified as the 6 core components of what we've defined as customer-centric logistics. So it's about offering building that seamless experience that's trustworthy, it's personalized at almost every touch point for the consumer. So there are 6 key components to the journey, which you can see on the slide there, and that's from enticing the shopper to actually purchase from you in the first place, right the way through to what happens once they've received it, if it goes wrong, and how they deal with that. And what we'll do is we're going to talk through these now, step by step, and illustrate each one with some case studies from our experience. Tim.
Thanks, Em. So to kick off with the first component, acquiring customers, from a retailer's perspective. So this is basically the phase before parcel hits a truck or a plane. We need to earn the trust from the consumer. So before a retailer basically needs to understand the local delivery options and what needs to be in the checkout, but also how to be transparent and to have be full transparent about the local impact in terms of customs, duties, taxes, and returns. Not having a situation that a parcel is hauled in customs before it can be unlocked to be delivered. The next component, facilitating transactions, do not underestimate the power of localized checkout. So if we look at a journey, to give an example, if you're selling to India, make sure you integrate with UPI, Unified Payment Interface, which is backed by the Indian government. So to really understand what's important from a checkout perspective, you really need to zoom into the market specifically. Together with our company ESW, owned by the Asendia Group, we have a case study from a customer, a US fashion brand, where we enabled that the brand is able to reach 140 currencies, accessing 92 local payment methods. You can imagine the impact to do this on your own, which is completely different compared to how we are able to help. So seamless currency conversion is key, and also a full landed cost solution. So do not, as we need to understand the impact of the minimums from an order value, and how does it impact the cost and the supply chain efficiency. The third component, managing orders. This is basically where logistics becomes a real tangible experience. From a tracking perspective, we noticed that over 90% of the consumers will track their parcel. But as a result, it needs to be clear that how will the tracking becomes visible. So nowadays we see customers having their own tracking scans integrated in their own apps, but at the same time, carrier providers across the chain are providing push notifications, and then the last mile provider is also providing notifications. So this needs to be an end-to-end aligned journey that you are aware on how to establish the right tracking information, but also based on certain tracking scans, we can already estimate the potential delay, which allows you to inform the consumer upfront what the journey may be, which will help to set expectations if somehow there may be a delay. The fourth component, delivery. So the key is to deliver the parcels where the consumers are. Offering real choice, be aware of the local delivery experience. The beauty of Asendia is that we are asset light, so we are able to work with multiple carriers if needed per market, which means that we could work with multiple carriers depending on the delivery zone, which will improve the delivery performance. McKinsey estimates that the out-of-home market will reach 9 billion euros by 2027 in Europe. 39% of the consumers already receive a parcel out of their home address, and this number increased from 2019 by 4%. So offering real choice is really important. So in Asendia, we refreshed our out-of-home capabilities. We called it ePack Go, which allows us to access over 125,000 out-of-home points for our customers worldwide.
Okay, so obviously when you buy something online, it's possible that you might actually want to return it. Doesn't fit, don't like it, it's damaged, whatever. And having a smart return strategy isn't just a necessity now. It can actually be a growth lever if it's managed correctly. And our research last year showed that 22% of shoppers will actually buy cross-border only if the returns policy is communicated very clearly and it's simple to use. They only want to be able to return it easily, get the refund quickly, and really build that confidence. And then because confident customers will buy and they'll buy again. So it should drive then the loyalty and that repeat purchase, which is the all-important piece about keeping the customers. And here at Asendia, we've spent quite a lot of time over the last 2 or 3 years thinking beyond just the simple delivery to actually the post-purchase piece and how you can actually support returns and actually ideally even reduce them, because that's really what we should be trying to do, because nobody wants them. As a consumer, you don't want to return them because it's a hassle. As a retailer, you don't necessarily want them back because it's not necessarily easy to get them back quickly, not always in the right condition for you. So we're trying to make the process of sending something back much smoother, much smarter, and as customer friendly as possible. And I think now for returns, it's very much about combining the digital with the logistics to be able to manage the process, to bring that visibility and make it much more easy for both parties. Some things to look for in terms of setting up a returns management solution. It's about the ability for that platform to integrate with the likes of Shopify, so you can support returns, you can support exchanges. The ability to charge fees or not, that's been a big debate lately, and you can see different retailers trialing different policies about flat fees, partial fees, penalizing certain types of customers, membership fees. And I think now it's not about one size fits all. It's about localization, understanding market expectations around charging, what's expected for sending items back, and also about personalization. How do you balance managing genuine consumers who want to return items with those perhaps serial returners, the wardrobers, the ones effectively undertaking fraud? And it's really trying to strike that balance can be quite difficult. So it's not just about making the process super easy, it's also about protecting yourself as a retailer. And I think just as a case study here, we've been working with a large fashion retailer based in the UK, but they've been shipping to over 100 countries, and they've had a lot of challenges getting returns to work, getting things back into stock, and really managing their costs. So they were very much focused on how can we charge, how can we tailor it to different countries, and being able to also get a return back and check it in country so that they could actually release a refund within 2, 3, 4 days of the shopper dropping it off. So it's a much better experience for the shopper. They also know it's back, they know it's been checked, and they also know, is it grade A? Okay, fine, I can bring it back into stock. Grade C, maybe not, I can come back slightly slower, but I've got a different way of managing it. They've also exploring options. Do we destroy? Do we then donate for those grade C items? So it's really starting to open up options. It's not just about, as I said, just moving something from A to B. And I think the other piece they found particularly useful is data. Using a returns platform, capturing the data about what's coming back, really gives you insight into consumer behavior. So what's coming back, why it's coming back, who's sending it back, which countries have got different trends, or even for dropping off parcels. So it's really starting to give insight about how you can then tailor return policies, how you manage and market products. And they've even managed to identify some issues in their supply chain, perhaps, for example, with product quality, certain damaged items. And then the final piece of the journey, kind of related to returns but broader scale, is the whole post-purchase piece. And I think this, again, also often gets forgotten, because when something goes wrong, customers want answers. They want answers quickly, clearly, in local language, and something they can understand. So you need to be able to provide multilingual support and proactive issue resolution, potentially even emailing out before something happens to say, okay, this has been delayed, but it's about keeping them informed, because taking care of a problem well actually drives loyalty. So even though there's been a problem, there's an element, I guess, of forgiveness and trust. We also know queries are costly to handle. So those where's my parcel, where's my order? They're not the simplest if somebody's got to ring in. So it's about the ability to support customers with self-serve through tracking, ability to self-serve their returns, to give them information that's easily accessible. And that's where you can start to look to AI to support, for example, chatbots, to reduce those customer inquiries and be able to have the interaction without having to speak to someone, where the labor is more expensive. But it's also about managing, it's that balance then between automation and human interaction. Because I think we've all seen, on social media where people reach out to carriers saying, I can't get hold of anybody, all I'm doing is going in a loop with a chatbot. And so it's really about understanding, okay, to what extent do I need some personal interaction versus how much can I automate? And again, just as a quick case study on this one, we were working with a retailer who was very keen to really focus on the management of faulty goods. And rather than just getting them returned, what they wanted to do is actually force the shopper to contact them and actually have a conversation with our customer service agent if it was faulty. And then they could offer maybe a discount, a credit, a gift note, or to try and drive as much as they could for them to keep the item rather than bringing it back. So again, rather than automating it and just accepting it back, they wanted the conversation, wanted to understand why it was faulty and how they could then help. And I think the other piece that's important around customer care, again, is data. We have a lot of data now. You have data from the checkout, you have data on the logistics, you've got data on returns, you've got data on inquiries. It's about taking that and understanding the trends. Where are the problems? Where are the issues? Because it might not be just the logistics you can troubleshoot issues. You might be able to prevent some issues by putting more information on your website, size guides, smart recommendations, and really about forming upstream at that very decision to buy and making it much easier at the start. So I think it's about getting all of these 6 components together, making sure customer is at the heart of that is really the key to driving loyalty. So just really want to conclude with some takeaways. So firstly, customer-centric logistics is really essential for cross-border e-commerce success. It's not just about cost, speed, operational efficiency. It's about understanding the customer and driving loyalty and growth. Secondly, thinking beyond the initial transaction. It's not just about taking the order, shipping it out the door. What happens beyond that? The post-purchase piece, particularly if they're returning. We've seen 75% of customers would actually hesitate to buy again from a retailer if they had a poor returns experience. Thirdly, data. I'll bang on about this one quite a lot. It's really key because by understanding the data and analysing, you can drive improvement. You can look for patterns, you can look for trends, and then start to address issues and really even move towards more sophisticated personalisation. Fourthly, localisation. It's not one size fits all. Markets are different, demographics are different. How do you manage and meet the expectations across those different areas? Oops. And then working with, obviously, experienced partners in fulfillment and shipping, those who can help you in your targeted regions, who can really then help and work with you to give you a head start to grow internationally. So it's really then the key message is that actually having the customer at the center of your logistics strategy from checkout, delivery, returns, post-purchase, actually allow you to take challenges and turn them into competitive advantage. In terms of, clearly, as we've said, we've thrown a lot of stats at you. If you want to download the report, the QR code is there. There's many more stats in there, but...
Okay, thank you, Helen. Right, question time. We've got about 10 minutes, so don't leave us hanging, right? You must have some questions. There's been a lot of stats, a lot of things to take on, I think it's fair to say. Any of the retailers want to clarify any of the information that's been shared? Ask a question about that. I've got my magic blue box here. Yeah, the microphone built in just there. No? Right, I've got some questions, which is rather fortuitous. Right, you mentioned twice, yeah, asset light versus, I guess, asset heavy. So can you just explain, first of all, what you mean by that? And give us an example of somebody who's asset heavy so we can see what the comparison is. And why is asset light stronger than asset heavy in terms of agility?
Yeah. So to your first question, so if you look at companies like DHL, FedEx, they own the complete supply chain end to end. They have their own planes, their own trucks, their own in the last mile. Meaning asset light, we don't have our own planes, we don't have our own trucks in the last mile. So we basically operate with the local hero, the local best provider. It can be in certain countries that the postal operator is the best company, can be a commercial carrier, can be, depending on the region, can be both. And because we have a global platform, we can easily connect across the supply chain to any provider which is best. But if that changes because of the market, we can also adjust quickly because we're not dependent on our own network.
Okay, so one of the obvious fears might be that because you don't own the assets, you've got strategic, well-chosen partners, you know, during peak, you know, Blue Monday, Black Friday, whatever they are, you know, how is your volume not bounced? And do you have strict SLAs? Yeah. Does your service get compromised at all?
So actually we do have global contracts. So it helps actually because we can also, instead of one route, we may be able to switch if needed. Yeah. So it's actually, I think last year, I believe it was Canada Post, was hit by a strike.
Right.
Our company could have routed the volume to different carriers, right, which allows us to be flexible. So now we see actually customers wanted to avoid this, signing up with us because we are more flexible to avoid. Because if you're in the middle of a strike, then obviously you can't change your logistics overnight.
Yeah, that's a brilliant example. We have a couple of questions on the iPad. The first one, you have to help me with this because I don't understand. So it's come from the floor. If sustainability is so important, then why is Shein, S-H-E-I-N, and Temu, T-E-M-U, I'm glad it means something to you, it doesn't mean anything to me, are so popular? Helen, do you want to answer that one?
I guess it's cheap, fast fashion, and I think this is where your challenge is. You've got sustainability versus perhaps cost of living.
Right.
Prices and the financial challenges. They are cheap, commoditized goods. Yeah. And do all consumers take sustainability into their purchasing decision? No. And if it's only 24% taking it into account, that's 75% who don't take sustainability into their purchasing decision.
Yeah, there's an ironic hypocrisy
Yep.
and paradox at play here with Primark versus, marching for a greener planet. Okay, interesting. Good question. I'm not sure we answered it, but good question, difficult one, impossible one to answer, to be honest. Right, another question from the floor. Any idea why consumers are preferring marketplaces over owned website? That was one of your stats when you talked about the high percentage of marketplace transactions. You had 20% on social platforms. So why are people moving into marketplace versus own website? And is it geographic behaviour? So more in Asia is marketplace. I think you kind of alluded to that. Do you want to pick that one up, Helen?
Yeah, so I think there's definitely a regional element to it, but also for retailers wanting to start to grow and position in another market, to go via a marketplace gives them that localization that they don't have to invest in initially.
Right.
So what you might find is that then if the volume takes off and they get traction in wherever it is, they then might invest in developing the website to support the local consumers with the local language, local checkout and so on. To turn it on via a marketplace is relatively easy, and it gives a route into growth, and they can start to test it with minimal
risk.
So one of the retailers I was talking about with returns, one of the countries they actually started selling through Amazon, and then they've subsequently launched their own website in the US. But it's
so what you're saying, it could be a first entrance strategy. Go with the marketplace, get some reputation, and then maybe spin off and have your own.
Because you've got a chance to learn. Because equally, you could go into a market and actually it doesn't work.
Yeah.
But your investment isn't the same as if you created a whole infrastructure around it.
So it's kind of a minimum viable product.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. Any questions? I've stimulated some confidence. Here we go. I'm going to try and throw it to you. Stay where you are, sir. Stay where you are. Hang on. I nearly hit that lady on the head. So sorry.
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah, perfect. So I'm Tomas from Trendio, okay? And one of the things that we have been having some difficulty on managing is cross-border returns. So basically, I think all carriers have betted a lot on guaranteeing such seamless experience on outbound, but on returns becomes a challenge. And as you mentioned, it's one of the key pillars of the customer-centric. So how is Asendia dealing with that? So are you being able to access the right carriers to do the right cross-bordering back? Or how do you manage that? Because in the end, you are dependent on third parties, so it's not your own networks. So we'd like to get some insights on.
Okay, so the way we've set up our return solution, this is very similar to our outbound. So we've specialized with the local heroes for a domestic return. We then have a return center where we're consolidating, and then we're managing the customs processes, so usually using our own brokers, particularly where we've got current flows, worked with them in terms of being able to provide them the data. So then it taps into our own transport network we currently manage.
And those hubs are Asendia's hubs? Because you just said you're a lightweight company, so you don't own anything. So are you basically engaging with a local hero and then concentrating, doing like a first mile on the return process, and then you run the last mile, not the carrier? That's what you mean?
It's so we have a handful of directly owned hubs where we have an Asendia subsidiary located. We have a hub which we've converted into a return center. Others we've used partners in the likes of the wider La Poste, Swiss Post family, who do own then the facilities. And then in terms of transport, it's the hauliers that we currently contract with, so not directly owned, but the ones we contract with usually for our outbound, and we're just using existing routes.
Basically, you break down the chain in two steps, one managed by the local hero and the other one managed by...
Yeah, and then we've knitted it together through the tech.
Got it, thank you.
That's really cool. Is it your own tech, or have you sort of plugged in some expertise tech?
So it's actually, we've used our sister company, ESW. So we've brought the two together. So ESW have built the platform, Asendia provide the logistics, and we've actually combined it within a single business unit.
Excellent, good stuff. On the returns thing, do you see for retailers the returns solution they put in place is strategic and should be part of their overall offer, or as a sort of a lowest cost afterthought?
I think we're seeing the shift. I think it's been the bolt-on because you have to offer returns. But what we're seeing now in the conversations I'm having with retailers, even in the SMEs, there's a lot more sophistication coming in. I've got SMEs asking for the likes of grading. So can you open it and actually check it? And here's my standard operating procedure and the list of rules I need you to check against. And actually stop. It's just much more sophisticated conversations than maybe 2 years ago.
Okay.
Sorry, but do you do that before arriving to the retailer, basically? So can you keep it on their own origin country and then
Yes.
do that grading and then decide if you dispose or if you really get it back?
No, absolutely. So where we've got the return sensor, yes, and then you could you can trigger the refund even at that point. So
Yeah.
within like a couple of days.
Got it. Thank you.
Excellent. Any questions from the floor? Yes, there's a question here, second row.
Thanks. Hi, Helen. Hi, Dim. Just a quick question. I've noticed that recently with a lot of retailers, whereas before they weren't charging for returns, there seems to be a trend where some of the bigger ones now are either partially charging or charging for certain types of returns. Have you noticed that that's a common thread?
Again, that's definitely starting to pick up. And again, starting to see more sophistication. So I think it's the likes of ASOS, for example. If you return within 14 days, it's free, and then you start to charge. I'm speaking to other retailers that are saying if you return 2 items, it's free. If you return 3, there's another charge on top. I think it's all related to the cost challenges that so many retailers are facing at the moment. And returns is not cheap. It's not a simple solution, and it's a cost and a headache retailers don't want.
Yeah. But it's back to the point that it's part of your strategic position to have a return solution. Okay, good. That answers your question? Yes. Excellent. Right, we're literally over time now. So thank you so much for your time, guys, Dim and Helen. Thank you, audience, for your participation. Much appreciated. Well done.